I think there should be improvement in traffic.
We could do more work up here, more employment.
Certainly I think people who have got children who are being educated are probably worried about what's happening, and then the usual things about health.
It comes down to local people organising themselves, but what the catalyst for that is very difficult to predict.
There's a lot of complacency amongst the younger ones, you know, not voting and things like that.
I think it's sometimes knowing where to go if you've got ideas about things and what you'd like to do to change your area. I think there's, you know, not many people can approach their local councillor or not quite sure who to kind of approach to do things about it.
A citizen is a person who feels responsible for the area in which they live and would like to have some say in in the running of it.
And a citizen means someone who works for the welfare of the community.
I think it's getting a group of people together who care, who really do want change.
Well, a lot of problems are caused by falls in older people.
A jury should be a set of people who are intelligent enough to understand the arguments and neutral and not be biased in any way.
Court case, yeah. That's what my idea of a jury, court case. People decide, give them the verdict.
A citizen's jury, I suppose it's someone who is loyal to the place and someone again who is intelligent enough to understand the issues and who's not biased in any way.
It would have taken all this black because I worked.
But if we hadn't afforded that woman a full and proper medical assessment, she would continue to fall.
I'm one of a group that has a little bit to say about everything.
All people 70 plus should be given regular GP health checks.
This is a record of how a citizens' jury was developed as a tool to investigate an important issue of concern to older people. We believe our experiences will encourage other groups and organisations to use citizens' juries for themselves.
Such that the lives of older people are improved, not really them, particularly in relation to falls.
Our first step was to invite a group of over 50-year-olds to explore a potential subject that our jury could investigate. We talked about all the issues that affected older people.
They changed bus times, they changed destinations without any warning whatsoever to anybody.
Funding comes in because if you're in a priority area you can get a lot of funding. If you're not in a priority area you get very little funding. And we're all people.
Yes, right.
We're not areas, we're people.
Isolated elderly, no matter what, do not have a say in any shape or form, and I feel very strongly about this.
At the end of the first meeting, there was an enormous range of issues that were of interest and concern to this group of older people. People really appreciated being listened to.
Now someone is taking an interest and asking for our opinion, and we are making decisions, which is absolutely out of this world.
Putting their points of view and being listened to, which I think is very important, because most of the time now you're not listened to.
We want to see things improved at local level, national level, and some of us realise, no, it cannot be done overnight. And it cannot be done in 5 years. But there should be some signs that someone is making a genuine attempt.
A lot of discussions took place following the first meeting to identify the priority topics.
And then at least for once, we would have a majority government.
They charge you £10 for it.
I've already They knew better than us. And sometimes when we go to hospital today, they'll ask and they'll say, well, I don't know why I had X. How should I know? It was only my body. No one explained to me.
But if you run a care bus service, it's door to door. You still pay 30 pence, but they use more fuel.
think normally if we consult with people, we tend to consult with user groups, and we tend to consult with people who have experienced a particular service. People, maybe they come into hospital, they're involved with a community service, and then they're asked if they would perhaps provide some more input. So I think they can then speak from their personal experience, but I think that is different to having a perspective perhaps of someone who hasn't experienced a service.
The process of choosing a subject was an important element in finding common ground between people who didn't know each other and were from different areas and backgrounds across the region. You may already be an established group and know what you want to investigate. The overall subject we chose was health research and new technologies as they affect older people. A steering group was formed from the initial pool of people gathered together to brainstorm the idea to choose. They took on the task of managing all the next stages.
I've learned that you can work together. Very diverse people can work together. You need to be able to accept that people have different views to yourself. You need to set your mind on a subject which you all agree on.
Before we got closer to refine the actual wording of the question for the jury, we invited a range of local experts to present their knowledge and perspectives on the issues we were interested in.
Slowing down the processes that lead to Alzheimer's disease, you could, at a stroke, you could reduce the number of sufferers from that
People
condition.
found these insights very useful, particularly when they were presented simply and clearly.
On this particular subject on health, I think we're looking really for changes long-term in better health care, but not just for the younger people, but right throughout the health service.
The key to maximising the eventual impact of the jury is to have a separate group of experts and people with close links with decision makers. We asked their advice on getting the best balance of information from potential witnesses. We called this group the Oversight Panel and kept them informed through the different stages.
It was interesting to be involved in the process and see how things panned out over the meetings, and to see really that people were very much coming from different views and different perspectives.
The next task was to recruit members of the jury. We sent out 1,500 general letters of invitation, using local authority ward areas together with the electoral register. Don't worry if you don't get floods of responses. We got around 60 people who were prepared to commit themselves for up to 10 meetings over 2 months. People were asked to provide basic information about themselves if they were interested in being a jury member. 12 people, plus reserves, were chosen to reflect a balance of age, gender, race and working experiences.
They want to maintain independence. They want to be detached from other people so that they can make their own decisions, be autonomous, be free to do what they want to do.
Well, looking around at the crowd that we have in there and the jurors that we have, we've got people from all walks of life.
And also important to older people is health. The health of themselves and the health of close family others.
I'm one of a group that has a little bit to say about everything that's to do with getting old.
And my special interest became older people and ageing, the experience of getting older. So I work in the university, and I've spent probably the last 30 years, as I've grown older, studying older people and the process of ageing.
The jury members listened to what witnesses had to say. They quickly learned that the issue of falls was more complex and significant than it first appeared.
So why should we be bothered about falling? Well, first of all, it's very, very frequent. Secondly, the impact of falling is very large. both on very kind of big tangible measures. For example, a fall in an older person is something that's very much likely to lead to them going into residential or nursing care, and certainly will greatly increase the chance of them having to do that compared to somebody who hasn't had a fall. A lot of falls lead to fractures and other disabilities that add to the level of care and the loss of independence for people.
But first of all, we're informed about what the speaker will be on about tonight, you know, what the subject's going to be. Tonight, for instance, about old people falling down in homes because of the dementia, probably the strong and powerful drugs that they're taking, and there's lots of things that that have that effect on them.
Now, older people tended to give us accounts which were basically, we classified them as moral accounts. So they spent a lot of time telling us that it wasn't their fault that they fell over, that they told us that it was an accident. That was just one of the things that had happened to them. You know, it might have been a crack in the pavement or something like that. It wasn't because they forgot their walking stick. So they weren't to blame.
The first thing to say is that most people are unaware of the extent to which older people account for most of the prescribed drugs. In 1998, older people received over half of the total prescriptions, so that's people over the age of 65, and that's going to continue to increase.
Sleeping tablets like temazepam or anti-anxiety drugs like benzodiazepines like diazepam, these will all at least increase fall risk by 5-fold. So sedative drugs are very bad for falling.
I think a majority of it is really common sense. Some of the issues here are common sense, you know.
I just went down hard, very hard, right on the back of my head. I didn't know, I didn't black out.
If she were seen by a physiotherapist, they would start physiotherapy exercises for gait and balance, taking into consideration the fact that she's got very poor vision. Her general practitioner might say, it's her vision, it's her eyesight, it's going, of course she's going to fall. An occupational therapist might say, well, have a good look at her house. There is a good chance, a 70% chance, that there are rugs or bits of furniture that need to be moved. All of those are correct, and all of those diagnoses need to be treated. But that woman actually was getting intermittent slow heart rates, which were causing her to lose consciousness, but she had no awareness of loss of consciousness. She just remembered going down. She very clearly says she didn't black out. She's had a pacemaker put in, and she's been fantastic since the pacemaker, because we've treated what caused her falls. It's given her confidence, and she's had no more symptoms. But if we hadn't afforded that woman a full and proper medical assessment, she would continue to fall, no matter what you did, because you hadn't treated the primary cause of her falls, just other potential causes, but not the key cause.
I think as a jury you have to think about a number of particular questions, and I suggest to you that you need to think about those in your deliberations. First of all, you need to decide amongst yourselves what we mean, or what you would like to mean, by quality of life.
We'll hopefully get some answers, by the way, and probably discuss again after the speaker said his bit. But discuss amongst ourselves what we can sort of say that might help.
When you mention the word jury, you think of a jury, you think of a courtroom, and it was that type of setting that I thought I would be coming into. But this is different, it's more friendly, and the atmosphere is created where you can openly ask questions and get answers.
After each witness had made their presentation, the jury members discussed what they had heard in order to ask particular questions.
Maybe it's because it changes so much. I know there's always the basic drugs.
I know, but what I'm saying is doctors aren't learning enough about drugs. And that girl last week, Roseanne Kenny, she said last week.
Witnesses returned to be asked detailed questions on their presentations by the jury.
But there is a concern that there tends to be more focus on drug interventions rather than non-drug interventions, because if you like, the dialogue is always being framed around drugs. And that's a kind of more, that's a more difficult thing. That would be my concern. It's really that there's a lot more discussion about drugs, even though I'm a clinical oncologist, than sometimes about non-drug options.
Jury members achieved a better understanding of the subject through this dialogue.
And I would really like to see some sort of a positive result come out of this, and the fact that, yes, we had the citizens' jury in Newcastle, this is the findings of the jury, this is how it was implemented, and some positive results.
Presented that it is the main recommendation.
Within our 10-week timetable, the final 3 weeks were set aside for the jury members to sift the information gathered and to decide their conclusions.
Want to sort of see.
I know, but it all comes into prevention though, doesn't it? Because if GPs had more knowledge of a drug, then it would reduce the risk of like overdosage of medicine.
The only reason I wanted that done was so we could discuss it. That's what I'm saying. Everybody's got their own ideas, and what we've all got to do is we've got to discuss and see what.
It is a space in which jurors, who have had no contact with the subject under discussion, start to build a set of practical recommendations that can be acted on by those in power.
And involves community care, community nurses, GPs and social workers.
I mean, there's all sorts of charities that exist specifically to help old people.
Taking the whole world on, we're only here to give a verdict on falls.
Yeah.
All people 70 plus should be given regular GP health checks.
Well, the day it's 75.
Yeah, it's not
you
regular.
Saying earlier about?
No, it's only 75.
Deep down, my personal feeling, my gut feeling is that the elderly are getting a raw deal. And I'd like to put that matter right, because I'm fast approaching that age and I want to make sure the services are there for me.
We held our launch of the jury verdict at the local Premiership football stadium to give it a high profile. At this stage, there should be lots of interest from press and policymakers, so the announcement of the jury verdict needs to be planned and publicised well in advance.
We recommend the development of a multidisciplinary falls pathway to coordinate and improve the care given to older people prone to falls. And this pathway should be controlled, coordinated and monitored by a falls pathway unit.
Information on NHS provisions, wellbeing check-up, help to access services. Information on agencies where they can access information and get assistance with form filling, etc.
By making them effectively immobile, either by over-medication or by not allowing them the ability to move around. Such actions result in increasing feelings of vulnerability.
Our jury created a lot of positive feedback about its broad scope and practical insights.
I mean, I think the findings have been very interesting to me, and one thing I was pleased about when I went to the launch and when I read the report was that a lot of what was in there was things that we were working towards. There was nothing that stood out that you thought, oh no, we couldn't possibly do that.
For us, the most important thing about the jury's verdict was that it created a new means of getting practical improvements for older people. It helped us engage health professionals and managers with some common sense observations of everyday people.
As well as the basic health problems. And I'd just like to commend you for thinking so holistically and so completely and thinking outside of the box.
So hopefully now they will listen to this and take it seriously, quite apart from anything. At the end of this, we're not trying to find somebody guilty as in the legal process. That's a very different style of things. This is much more open-ended, that rather than condemn someone, we're endeavouring to find a solution.
Professional interest in older people disuse new health technologies or force to respond to the...
If something has some clout and if something's involved the public or users, then sometimes it's easy, it's helpful to have that as a reason for doing something. But still, you still come across funding issues.
Regulated
such that the lives of older people are improved, not merely lengthened, particularly in relation to falls.
Both of these groups, I think, will have an interest in the findings.
The result has got to have the effect that so that people in wider areas and eventually throughout the United Kingdom can get to grips with.
We want everybody else to know how easy it is, how important it is, how fun it is, and how useful it might be to do a citizens' jury. We don't want community groups to wait for government or local authorities or other interested parties to ask them. We want people to feel empowered to do it for themselves.
I think the power of the people is very, very strong. I think that with just little steps you can make bigger things happen.